Hello, everybody. The WWU MBA Program and the WWU Alumni Association are excited to welcome you to today's WWU MBA Thought Leader Series, Thought Leader Speaker Series webinar, Executive Skills for Nonprofit Leadership. I'm Mark Staten. I'm Director of the MBA Program here at Western Washington University. And our speaker today is Phaedra Beckert. She is passionate about making the world a brighter place. Phaedra transitioned from political campaigns to working for nonprofit advocacy and ultimately fund development for higher education. It's her belief that institutions thrive on a foundation of basic principles. Phaedra earned her MBA from Western Washington University in 2021. She got her BA in interdisciplinary studies from the University of California, Berkeley in 2002. She's currently on the board of directors of the Northwest Avalanche Center, as well as an alumna of the National Ski Patrol. Phaedra is an alumna of the National Ski Patrol, and I still get nervous on chair 8, which is like a blue, but it's kind of like a hard blue at Mount Baker. So if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So a little housekeeping before we dive in. Some of you have submitted questions with your registration, and we really appreciate those. If you did not, but you have a question that you're interested in asking, please use the Zoom Q&A feature on the bottom of the window there to send us any questions that may come to mind. We'll be responding to those questions and the questions that were submitted previously during the Q&A towards the section at the end of the presentation. And we will do our best to answer as many as we're able to during our time today. Additionally, I will say some of you submitted questions about sort of the MBA program specifically and admissions requirements and things like that. That's not really what we're talking about today, but I will be responding to those people individually about those questions. All right, finally, we recommend that you use the speaker view, in that upper corner there, as part of Zoom. And let's get started. Phaedra, take it away.
Hi, everyone. Well, let's practice with Zoom first and see if I can share my screen. Fantastic.
There we go.
My name is Phaedra Beckert, and I am delighted to talk with you today about my experience in the nonprofit world and with business. And I'm currently a director here at Western Washington University for our alumni and constituent engagement team, which has been part of my career journey and narrative. And so I'll share a little bit about my journey vis-a-vis work in the nonprofit world and how MBA management skills have really transformed what it is that I'm capable and able to bring to the table. And so as a young person, I knew that I wanted to make the world a better place. I know that's cliched. And I don't think that I could have envisioned the journey that I've taken. So I know just putting different information out there in front of folks as you are on your journeys is super powerful and just provides a buffet list for what are the things that make you uniquely you and how can you capitalize on that? And whether that's in the business world, for profit, or for the nonprofit world, I would make the argument that there's a lot to move forward with there. For me, I circuitously found my way initiating with political activism. And within that, I did a lot of community organizing on the ground and really going into neighborhoods and into place to be able to just rally out others about causes that I valued. I started as a political canvasser. So, people that go door to door knocking. I was shy. And in that very humbling process, I learned one valuable skill, which was my voice. And I found that inspiring others could really, really, it filled my cup, and that you could make a career out of that. So there we go. So my screens are not keeping up with my talk. So a little bit about today, as I'll rewind. I'll talk a little bit more about myself in a second. I'm going to make a case for nonprofits. I'll argue, you'll see that I find there are more similarities than differences. I would love to share a bit about nonprofit leadership and opportunities that are available. And why an MBA is a great choice for that. And then Mark and I will share the Q&A at the end. And because I don't get to have my own talks very often, you get to see it populated with my little dog. So that is my puppy Maya that I got this year, and I haven't had a puppy before, so I'm pretty smitten. And now we are on my bio screen. So as I've learned over the time, I'm very mission driven. I won't read a screen to you, but I definitely will jump in after the community organizing down at the bottom. In finding my voice and bringing others to state capitals and to our federal capital in DC, I transitioned into lobbying and for nonprofit causes. I thought that was the end all be all until I learned that you worked like 100-hour weeks. And the physiology of just who I am did not keep up with that, but it didn't mean that I didn't care. So I transitioned into consulting work. And in that space, I got to just educate others on what it was like to do community organizing well. So a lot of the people skills and a lot of the skills that I'll share slightly later in the talk that I believe are very relevant business and for-profit leadership skills. And I also arrived at the opinion that, the world doesn't run without money, and there are a lot of dollars out there, and how do we think about revenue generation? So I transitioned into fund development, so fundraising for higher education. And so I've been here at Western Washington University since 2016. And for me, that has been just a beautiful full circle and expression of how when people give, they are giving because they are passionate and it is from their heart. And so to be thoughtful about how people give of their time, they give of their talents, and they give of their treasure, and to provide opportunities and for those to have a home. And so that has really guided me. And also I had a phenomenal opportunity to have an evening MBA program, which is why we're talking tonight. And how do you sharpen and hone those skills and build a suite of extraordinarily relevant skills to support all operations and all management? And so once I really found a home in just owning the different pieces of organizational management, it allowed me an opportunity to give back. And so now I take a lot of pride in being a volunteer. And I love the Robin Sharma quote at the bottom: business of business is relationships, but the business of life is that human connection. And so I would love to make a case for why NGOs. I don't know. Janine, are you there for the poll? Awesome. So I am really curious about who's here with us today. If you would take a second to look at this poll, I am curious, like, who are you? Are you interested in nonprofits? Are you a member? Do you serve in any way? Are you an MBA? Do you want to have an MBA? So if you'd take a second.
I apparently cannot vote.
I'm learning that too.
Yeah.
Sorry, as panelists, you can't.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, Western by definition is a nonprofit organization. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So I would put yes for that first one for me.
Phenomenal. Do we have results? Am I looking for those?
Let me know when you want me to stop it.
Oh, great. Let's go. Can everyone see this, or are we reading it out loud?
That is a great question, Phaedra. I actually don't know if I know that answer. So there we go.
I love problem solving. So of the folks that are with us today, how many are members of a nonprofit organization? 86%. That's pretty powerful. Right on, folks. If you're a member of a nonprofit, do you volunteer? 68%. And do you serve on a board? 38%. Do you have an MBA? Are you interested in an MBA? 36%. All right. So that actually provides some context. So thank you all for participating. So a not-for-profit, that's a non-governmental organization, sometimes called the independent sector. I don't know, I think it's a little strange to name something by what it isn't, not for profit. But I'll use these terms interchangeably today. And it doesn't mean that these organizations can't create more income than expenses. So it's an important point. And I believe that all healthy organizations do. So, voluntary associations mean that citizens can band together either physically or conceptually to question, to convene, and to act. Nonprofits make us good citizens, I believe. And people and organizations can hold government and businesses accountable. So large examples would be the Berlin Wall, our 5-day work week, anti-smoking laws. Think about the ACLU website shutting down after being overwhelmed by web traffic, after pivotal elections. And civil society itself, that refers to all the things that people and organizations do together without being forced to do it. Like people show up, like are the folks on our poll. And I have a favorite John Gardner quote, who's a leadership author out of Stanford. And John says, "To make healthy communities possible, we shall first have to rehabilitate the idea of commitment beyond the self." So also American author and also a nonprofit expert, Waldemar Nielsen, he defines this sector, the nonprofit sector, by doing 3 things. Firstly, it delivers a wide range of services, with the goal being to bridge the gap between government investment and actual community needs. Second, it strengthens our other 2 sectors, the for-profit and government, by creating corrective or even compensatory effects. And lastly, thirdly, it serves as a humanizing catalyst, offering people an opportunity to participate. It's the idea that there's an outlet to the nearly universal impulse for altruism. I would say that's also supported by our pollists today. And so I say, why the not-for-profit? There's a critical role here in questioning the status quo. I find that there's injustice everywhere, and we have an opportunity at every juncture to counterbalance. And the major role here is providing those gap resources and advocating for public policy, from my perspective on the world. And I guess by extension, through philanthropy itself is not defined by wealth. Anyone can give. And I'm going to end this slide with a Peter Drucker quote. That's not the one that's on the screen. Nonprofits have no bottom line. They are prone to consider everything they do to be righteous and moral and to serve a cause. So they are not willing to say, if it doesn't produce results, then maybe we should direct our resources elsewhere. Nonprofit organizations need the discipline of organized abandonment, perhaps even more than a business does. And so that will lead us into the next slide. So my goal in presenting similarities today is to provide a very broad brushstrokes and some of my key takeaways from analogs from both type of nonprofit and for-profit entities. I'm super happy to dive into the weeds a bit during our Q&A, just to make sure that we're targeting the interests and the curiosities of our audience. And so if you want to withhold questions or save them, and Janine will capture them, I'm really looking forward to it. Okay, so both nonprofits and businesses make money. And I want to get out there right away and say, I don't know what it is about our society that believes that nonprofits must run in poverty to be a good nonprofit. For-profits and nonprofits alike can run badly. And they can run badly with insufficient resources, full stop. So there are many popular arguments suggesting that nonprofits should be run like businesses. I have even worked for some, and we'll look at that here. And I'll additionally argue that GuideStar and measuring percentages of donations against budget can be problematic. This is sometimes benchmarked as service to mission. It's the outcomes that matter, in my opinion. Does the organization or business deliver on its promise? Does it deliver on its mission? If it delivers, it is doing its job. Which brings me to my first similarity, our mission. So mission is relevance to our audience. There's an emotional connection, and the entity, whether you're for-profit or not-for-profit, wouldn't exist if it was not relevant or had a connection to the audience. And why is what you do, whether it's the thing or the service, why is that important to people? And it is this ongoing support that keeps something alive. So how do you do that? And within that, we have what I would argue are timeless principles. Both for and not-for-profits must measure the correct things. This leadership and skill shows up when we're determining what to measure and focusing entirely on what it is that we are measuring. I would say almost nearly to the exclusion of everything else. And that leads us to the power of no. So are you doing your mission? Is it the right mission? And are you following through the implementation of that mission? In my experience, you practice doing the right things, the right activities, you practice them like habits. And we all have more to do and to grow here. And it's a continuum. It's not like you ever arrive. You will always do more and be better. But those that are successful are relevant to their communities. They measure the right things, and they're extraordinarily mission driven. And I would say that that is the same for both for-profit and nonprofit businesses. And there's also mission creep, which is a word that's often used in the nonprofit realm. And I think it actually applies to businesses, so I'm putting it in here. But that's a fact-checking opportunity. So it's the idea that you are doing things maybe that are outside of your stated mission. And that's an opportunity to begin to ask questions and why. And honesty is okay. And it's always okay to change and to be nimble and to be truly reflective in such a way that you're able to assess exactly where you are, what your mission is, what are you doing, and what are you not doing, most importantly. And so we all have, both for-profit and nonprofit, have shareholders. And however you want to define them, I will be very loose here. So, but it moves into that idea of relationships. And right now, there's really two main relationships. There's the internal relationship. So how are you foundationally? How are you with your people internal? Excellent, like the idea of this excellence, that you would be bringing your best to any organization, for profit or nonprofit, for me is a clutch piece, because it is setting that expectation. And I saw some of the, there's some of the questions that came in were related to perhaps the, nonprofits maybe aren't as efficient and don't organize as well. And I would say, no, that's not true. We bring our best, we stay focused to the mission, and we provide a high level of excellence. And we do that within our relationships. And excellence in our internal relationships indicates a healthy enterprise. And this is foundational for all your work, nonprofit or for-profit. Success often looks like maybe a shared value system around decision-making, promoting learning internally, rewarding critical thinking, embracing uncertainty and complexity. How are you with your people, and how are you with listening, and how are you living your mission? And is everyone on board? Is everyone on the bus? And then second to that is your external relationships. And here, who is your community? Who are your constituents? And the clarity of your mission ensures that your relevance in your communities. And this is one of your most valuable relationships to nurture. Ongoing strategic planning, communications of your outcomes, and just effective collaboration to your external communities means you'll be regularly testing your mission and proving viability. And I see that as being the same between for-profit and nonprofits. And your relationship with your external constituents involves these excellent listening skills, really being able to ID and to get to know interests, motivations, aspirations. And you want to create extraordinary experiences with your constituents. And that's how you solidify those relationships. And moving on to momentum. For me, that is maybe my word for building the brand. Maybe even going viral, right? So there's a psychological principle that people want to align with the winning horse. And that idea that you are so relevant and everyone is on board, that's powerful. And that's not different between or across sectors. That's the same. And lastly, it's the investment in infrastructure. So here, insufficient resources means that you are less able to deliver on your mission, either as an NGO or a business. It's the same. And better resources means better results. And I imagine you'll agree. I mean, it's a positive feedback loop of impact. And just circling back to that idea of just this nonprofit poverty, I'll begin my differences section, which you saw is coming up next, with an idea that yes, there is definitely a measurable difference in wages. And I'm a huge advocate for wages and for transparency in organizations and structure and outcomes and what's going on. So I would say that it's okay to expect for our nonprofit partners to thrive on a living wage. And that would be moving us into the key differences. As I keep clicking. So what's a major difference? Well, something that I don't think I realized when I jumped into the nonprofit world is success means that you just worked yourself out of a job. So going back to being viral, it is amazing. And there is no shortage of incredible work that needs to be accomplished in our world. And, there's excellent organizations and structures to do that. And speaking back to the idea of, is there mission creep? It's okay to evolve. If you are achieving success, what are other categories? Or maybe it's right to dissolve. You've accomplished your goal and you can reinvest, your human capital and other resources in other areas. So I would say that's a huge difference. And second to that is I would say there's leadership style differences. And I'll also say, hear me out, I don't know that they should be different. So the traditional perception of business leadership style is a lot more autocratic or very top down. And in the volunteer world, or even with nonprofits, when folks maybe aren't making those living wage salaries that I was talking about, it's not a top-down approach. Managing volunteers, that's a powerful kind of leadership and that's persuasion. And how do you inspire people to make the right actions and think that they're theirs? How do you inspire people to the greater idea of we? And how do you create the conditions for these right actions to happen? And I label that consensus leadership. And here you inspire resources of time, of talent, of treasure, which in the nonprofit world are all valid currency. And I would say that, businesses could capitalize on this too. And you find that job satisfaction, if you look at different reports, are much higher if folks feel that they are part of the solution, that they are on the bus, that if they are inspired and it is them, having agency to take the actions that they want. And so Janine, I would love to take a poll because I would like to pose the question, which is the big one on the slide, a shocking thing here. Do you think that the business sector would benefit from being more like nonprofits? Should these differences maybe be similarities? Mark, you can't vote.
I would vote yes.
I was leading the witness a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay, I think people probably voted by now. What's our answer? I led all the witnesses. This is fantastic. Hooray.
Success means your work is over.
Right? And moving on to the next thing. So, what does that look like for volunteering? What are we looking at for volunteer boards and leaders? So at first glance, I mean, you may not think of nonprofit leadership as a typical use for an MBA, which is why we're all here. And I would hope that I made the case in the last few minutes that actually this isn't true. And I've had an opportunity recently to serve on a board, which in my personal narrative is my way of giving back because I have that MBA. And I had the great opportunity to participate in the MJ Murdoch Trust Program. And that's a leadership and development program by a foundation for regional nonprofits in the Pacific Northwest. And the skinny on that one is it helps executive directors and board members have an opportunity to learn really strategic principles for board health, as they choose to define it. Good governance, what does that look like? Building good board culture and ensuring sustainability and envisioning what is that preferred future for the organization. And board health actually includes good governance because it's what is the pluralism like piece here? How are you engaged? How are you involved? And the sustainability piece is how are you regenerating? So how are you attracting more volunteers? And I would say that's through truly delivering on your mission. And my primary takeaway from a large suite of programming, but really just a couple elemental ideas, was that I am not necessarily there to deliver on my subject area of expertise. And I sit on the board of the Northwest Avalanche Center to help to build a major gift donor program because that doesn't exist in entirety yet. And I was excited to give back and to jump in and say yes. And I was humbled a bit because best practices for board leadership are you have ownership over all organizational activities. And Phaedra of pre-MBA would have been maybe shaking in her shoes a little bit. But Phaedra post-MBA, I had an incredible aha moment and I got this. I understand financials. I understand payroll. I understand HR concerns and branding and management and understanding the larger landscape. And this summer, I had that aha moment for me was recognizing that my time at Western through the MBA program came full circle. And I am proud to bring all of these skills to the table to make my part of the world even more effective, delivering on my nonprofits, promised outcomes, our mission. And I am so delighted that my knowledge and skill can support this mission and support future missions because, hopefully we work ourselves out of a job if we do our jobs right? And so, yeah, I guess I just want to speak to a couple pieces on the slide. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but the world is quite literally run by the people that show up. please show up. And to my piece of excellence, bring your best, and you do make a difference. So encouraging volunteerism here for my little part of the world. You matter, it matters. And so thank you in advance. And hello, WWU MBA. And Western's got a focused but generalized degree. It helped me to feel truly well-rounded in my ability to be a leader in organizational management. And it gave me that confidence to know that I am showing up, and I'm showing up with that excellence, and to provide that opportunity for me to feel that I can robustly give back. And I'm hoping for a robust question and answer section. So
Yes.
Mark, please join me. I look forward to seeing questions come in, because I think we can do some deeper dives, but I definitely wanted to give the broad brushstrokes. So
yeah, no, and Phaedra, thank you so much. This has been great. You know, I was excited to have you join us for this particular session because of your experience. And sort of the way you talked about how you could sort of see that there was, you know, you've been doing this volunteering work, you've been doing this nonprofit work before you got your MBA, but then how it sort of you're able to do it differently with your MBA. And I thought that was, you know, you touched on that great. So one of the questions that came in that I thought was really interesting, and I thought you would be interesting for you to talk about it because of your sort of broad history in nonprofit leadership or nonprofit work, is how do you keep in touch with the needs of the boots on the ground, in the sense that, you know, again, it's you know, you were that person knocking on that door, and now you're that now you're the person on the board. So, and you've had sort of all the roles in between. What do you think is the way to manage that?
I'm going to go back to my relationships, and boots on the ground could be both your internal people or your external people. Like, who are your constituents? Who are you serving? Who is your community? And that's showing up, being present, that's listening, that's really defining the we. And to truly be a good listener is a powerful skill set. And for me, boots on the ground is you're there on the ground too, and you listen, and you are part of this community. And I would say that a for-profit business benefits from that just as much as a nonprofit. You need to know your people. You need to be there with your people.
Mm-hmm. That one of your comments I thought was great, and I made a comment about it, was this idea that you've done your job when you don't have a job anymore, and so that's just a fascinating thing in terms of what it means to be working for a nonprofit. Someone actually asked specifically about their situation of trying to get together a community of nonprofits specifically to look at traffic safety in a rural part of Kitsap County. And as someone who has spent some time in Kitsap County, is beautiful, and the rural parts are rural. So so what do you think is, like, how would you do that? Like, because this seemed like it's interesting, because I think that what I liked about this question was it was so specific, but I think it's also pretty generalizable in terms of organizing nonprofits.
Absolutely. It goes back to the relationships, knowing your people. I'm also going to go deep into time. So it's a common community organizing principle of really creating, matrices of influence and power. So a lot of times when I approach an issue, I think of things in terms of Venn diagrams. And there's lots of fascinating intersections. And to this question, as you're thinking of, like, basically a power map, it's like, who is who? Like, who's on the table? Who makes decisions? Or who needs to be at the table that isn't there making decisions? And then you determine, all right, we've already talked to all the people. We really understand the issue. We know who needs to be there. We understand the decision tree, like how would decisions be made? And then you figure out a plan on how to influence the influencers. And that could be direct, that could be you, or maybe you're not the right messenger, but you need to put together a plan for who influences the influencers and influence them. And so I really enjoy putting together those matrices to really think about community change from how does change happen, who makes the change, and how do we reach those people?
Makes sense. Makes sense. Couple sort of more sort of specific questions that I think your experience can respond to is a lot of what nonprofit work is about, and I would imagine what a lot of the board's work is about fundraising. And so is there some sort of best practices that you know around grant writing? And are there some best practices, you know, in terms of donation requests, both in terms of the work that you're doing for, you know, the Northwest Avalanche Center or other boards, as well as, you know, what you do here at Western?
Absolutely. So you're going to hear me say it again. Relationships. Relationships.
Not where those is going.
I have been a grant manager in the past, and it's relationships. It's knowing your audience, and in this case, it would be the foundation or the government entity or whoever is.
So, I mean, actually, I don't really know. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit how little I know.
Oh yeah, let's go into
about grant writing. And so
Yeah.
when a nonprofit is looking for grants and they're writing grant proposals, what you're saying is it's basically either they're going for a governmental fund or some sort of other third-party nonprofit that gives out money, like a foundation.
Thanks for bringing us to that foundation.
Okay. So then, is there one, like, do you have experience with both, and what would you say is sort of the difference between the you know, doing it that way?
So the relationship piece is really understanding your audience, and so
Okay.
you need to it's the Venn diagram again. So you need to really understand what the funder is after, what their mission is.
I was about to say that. Why
do they exist in the world?
I always tell people, if you're going to ask someone for something, you first have to figure out what their mission is. And then you have to sort of frame whatever you're asking for within their mission. So it's as much as it's about relationships, it's also about taking that sort of educational step to understand whom you're asking and what are they looking for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Just the listening skills, the being able to put yourself where they are, exist in their shoes, and then have the conversation. And so when you think of what is it you're seeking to accomplish, what is it that they are seeking to accomplish, and where is that middle ground, and speaking effectively to that middle ground in their lexicon, in their words.
Even though we're recording this, I'm going to ask this question on the slide rather. Is one easier, is like governmental grants easier to get than foundational grants, or foundational grant? Like, which would you say are easier to get?
I moved from grant management into individual donations because my goal is to move the needle, and to move the needle as far and as fast as possible for change. I think there is truly instrumental change to be happening from funders, from grants. There are often scant dollars, and a lot of heavy resources are placed in chasing those when you could be having conversations with individuals. And lots of folks are philanthropic, and a lot of people care. And it's finding the people that care and having a structured and organized program, going back to the good habits and best practices, and in doing that. So there's a piece at the table for everyone and for all of these elements. From my perspective, yes, you want to cover your bases, but I think that individual donor philanthropy can move the needle much quicker.
That's interesting. I have a buddy who's a medical researcher, he's an MD, and I won't name any names because it's a very, very, very large, very, very, very local nonprofit that's our foundation that's dedicated to global health. And he and his ex-wife really like to get a lot of documentation on the impacts of the donations. And he ended up saying that it was just like the paperwork to prove what they were doing was getting done, got in the way of actually getting it done. And so he's moved away from that very, very large foundation. So I could see what you're saying around that.
And there's something to be said for diversifying your income streams, right? Another MBA principle, and just being thoughtful about don't be reliant on one source. And if you have the resources and capacity to perhaps let one source get you started, but quickly diversify so that you are well-rounded in your funding streams to allow you to remain true to your mission.
Yeah, that's great. And then another question that actually I kind of wanted to answer, but I'll let you answer it first. Because I'm the marketing professor. Someone asked the question about who should drive the marketing plan development, the board or the actual organization. I'll let you answer it first, and then I'll say what I said.
I'm definitely a process person. So I see the strategic plan as being that visionary piece. And secondary to that is the operations planning. Like, how are you going to accomplish your plan and in what way? And the marketing plan for me is nestled very neatly within the operations planning.
It's funny because I use the term tactical.
Sure.
And so it's the same thing, but like, there's you guys sort of your strategic vision and then your tactical implementation under it. That's what I talk about in my classes. And oftentimes anyone who's taken my class is probably sick of me saying this. But a lot of times when in the marketing strategy class, I will take out my red pen virtually because I use an iPad. And I say, that is not a strategic choice, that is a tactical choice. And so I would say, sort of echo what you're saying, is I think that even if you have a lot of experience within marketing, the people that are doing marketing within the nonprofit, it's their job to do it. And you shouldn't necessarily, like, if your time and talents are better served thinking sort of more long-term, more strategically, more having that vision than sort of writing a marketing plan. That said, I also know that a lot of these nonprofits that people are interested in working with, maybe they don't have someone on staff that can do it as well as you can. And so then, the other thing I always say in class is the answer to every question is it depends.
Yeah.
So, so I think that generally speaking, I would say if you're working on a board that's supporting a fairly robust organization, let the organization be in charge of the marketing plan development. However, if you're in a sort of a smaller one and that's something that just isn't getting done and you have the resources to do it, you should probably then you can get it yourself.
I am a big fan of clarity of roles. Just to expand on that a little bit further. So make sure you know what hat you're wearing, regardless of the size. So if you're acting as a board member, I would say that is exactly spot on. If you are acting as a volunteer, because I'm giving both of my time and talent and my expertise, right? Put your volunteer hat on, but don't have your board member hat on at the same time. You go and then you get to be a volunteer and you get to be at the humble service of the organization and show up, and you don't have to, you don't have to be a leader in that way. You can just, provide your talent. And that's a great way to leverage our communities and just be really clear about what role you are serving and at what time, and that those around you know that too, because that can be really tough on staff. If they feel like they're in the presence of someone that's trying to tell them what to do and they're not exactly their supervisor. So that can be really confusing, but having clarity of roles, I think you can accomplish a ton. So I don't have concerns there as long as there's clear communication.
Yeah, I've definitely been in that situation where the clarity of roles thing is tough. I also deal with this kind of regularly when as the marketing strategy professor, when I'm teaching the class, I often say, let's try and keep any issues that you would ask the MBA program director, let's not talk about that now because I'm teaching you in the class now. And so then it's hard to do, but I think setting boundaries and setting roles, I think, is a really good thing.
And that works in the classroom. That works, I would, in business too, right?
Yeah.
You want to know what you're doing and why you're there and what are the rules for the interaction.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't see any more open questions. This has been great. Phaedra, this has been fantastic and exactly what I was hoping we would talk about. So unless I'll pause for a second, see if anyone has any other questions that they'd like to put in the Q&A. Most of the questions that have been asked were about, I couldn't see the poll. And
And I can also share my contact information on the screen. I have a very open door policy. This blue door that you see by me is on the 3rd floor of our environmental studies here.
Yeah, she's right over there.
I should wave at you.
Yeah, exactly.
I love talking to folks. For me, it is about relationships, and that fills my cup. And if folks are interested, or if I could somehow point you to resources that would allow you to be effective in your communities and either supporting or finding your mission, that would delight me to no end. So let me reshare maybe. I think that got bumped off. Plus, you get an opportunity to see my favorite little creature.
Okay, so Clarissa asked one more last question. Clarissa asked, so what do you believe is the best way to keep the relationships sort of within the organization going?
Well, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own relationship style. I always start first just with my listening hat. And go and spend time and be with people. Whether I'm on a nonprofit board, or I'm a volunteer in an organization, or even in my paid job, I really see a immense value in taking people out to coffee, learning about them and who they are and what their motivations and their personal mission statements are. Maybe not in exactly those words, but you'll hear who they are as a person, and that gives you all the tools to best inspire someone, interact with them, dialogue. I mean, depends on what your goals are. But for me, that very human element of just showing up, right?
Yeah.
Really facilitates that.
Cool. All right. I got one good question I want to we'll go in. So how do you appeal to younger donors for in any sort of fundraising role that you've that you've had? I will say I went to the President's Society for the Western Washington Development Officer, or the Office of Advancement, and I was the youngest person by 50 years, and I'm almost 50. So so it's a good question.
That's a great question. It's about appealing to your base. And so if there's a disconnect, there's a lot of tools and best practices, from focus groups to doing A/B testing in your communications, to really being thoughtful about peer fundraising. And Marshall McLuhan said the medium's the message. And so I know a ton of nonprofits are really utilizing TikTok right now with extraordinary results.
Yeah.
And don't be dated and really understand what the trigger is, the wrong word,
Right.
But how does it goes back to being in someone's shoes and listening and really understanding who they are, and then speaking to that. It's not you telling them what your message is. It's you listening to their wants and needs and aligning it with yours.
Right.
And then sharing it with them on their terms. And whether that's the mechanics of how you communicate with them, to even language and word choices or imagery. I mean, I think there's so many variables within that. But it's doable, and it's a fun problem. And go talk to young people if you're not a young person, and see what it's like to be in those shoes, and you'll have a good time with it.
Yeah, great. So I want to thank the absolutely fantastic and wonderful Phaedra Beckert for joining us today, and from all of us at Western Washington University and the MBA program, we want to thank all of you that signed up and joined us for this webinar today. We want to thank, we also want to thank Janine and everybody at the WWU Alumni Association for their partnership. They know how to run webinars. I don't. And we would like to thank those of you who chose to support the MBA program as part of this webinar. So someone asked this question that there's a recording of this that's going to be live in a couple days, because we're going to actually do some good transcription as well. So the recording of this webinar will be emailed out to you, to everyone who registered in the next few days. So please check soon for that arriving link. We'd also like to invite you to join us for our next WWU MBA Thought Leaders Speaker Series webinar. Maybe marketing guys should come up with a better name for these. That's going to be with WWU MBA Advisory Board member and head of global growth and media analytics for Amazon Web Services, Sachin Pai. Sachin's going to be talking about how to use analytics to grow your business. Have a great day. Thank you so much for coming, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thank you so much.